This is Tim Shepard, the Vintage Airstream podcast. I'm back with another video. This one, I'm going to talk about my upgrade to a lithium ion phosphate battery. So for the last 18 years or so, I've had two 12-volt Lifeline AGM batteries. The first set lasted about 9 years, and then this current set I just pulled out, they're just coming up on 8 years. They're still running okay, I think, but I did run them flat last year on accident when I was messing with the solar. I was going to see how the solar kept the batteries charged, and they went flat. Again, we always go to, full hookup campsites and plugged in. Lithium ion phosphate battery popped up on sale recently, and I started investigating them more on YouTube, checking them out, learn all I can about it, and I thought, I should give it a try. So that's what I did. So why lithium ion phosphate? There's tons of videos online. That's how I learned about it and dug into it a little bit more. Basically, the AGM batteries, like I said, I had 200 amp hour batteries, but you could only discharge them down to 50%. So 2 batteries that would only give you 100 amp hours. So that's one thing. But again, I always plugged in, hooked up anyway. But I just like to experiment and play with new toys, and that's why my trailer is always in a state of changing. So with the lithium ion phosphates, you can run them down to, pretty much zero. And the interesting thing about them is they have what they call a BMS, a battery management system inside of them. And that pretty much protects the battery from you being able to do anything really stupid. It'll turn itself off if you overcharge it. If it runs down, it'll turn itself off. If it gets too cold, it'll turn itself off. If it gets too hot, etc., in order to save itself. So that's the nice thing about them. Plus, the new not lithium, but lithium iron phosphate batteries have a different chemistry that makes them pretty hard to catch fires. I've seen people puncturing them, and all they do is smoke. I'm sure the smoke isn't nice to breathe, but basically, they're technically could be safer than a flooded or AGM battery because they don't off gas. And again, they're smart that if the terminals get shorted out, they will shut themselves off and stuff like that. So I felt pretty good about going to it. And lately they come in really large sizes. The one I picked up was 280 amp hours. And again, you can use that all the way down. So it'll last, a 280 amp hour battery will last almost 3 times what 200 amp hour AGM batteries would, and it won't harm it. And they're good for like 4,000, 6,000 cycles, 10 years plus. So really cool. I'll insert a picture here of my setup, how it was before I touched it. But these are the 2 Lifeline batteries that I pulled out. And these are the battery boxes that I had them in. So, and then those 2, I think it's 2-aught wires. That's what I had putting these Lifelines in parallel. So all of that you see, all that weight and everything, I was able to get rid of. I don't know exactly if it's about the same, but the large lithium battery I got, which I'll show you in a second, is maybe lighter than one of these, because they're a lot lighter, the technology, than this. I was surprised picking up one of these Lifelines, how heavy that was, and I had to have 2 of them. So that's another thing about amp hour per amp hour. The lithium ion phosphates are a lot lighter also. And then if you get a bigger pack of amp hours, you can get 50 amp hour batteries, 12-volt batteries, 100, 200, mine's a 280, 300 on up. I think I've seen a 460. They get bigger, but then you don't have all of the connecting wires to connect them to parallel them up. So wire's expensive also, so you save on that. Okay, so I have the twin bed set up in my 1960 Ambassador. So under the street side bed is where my batteries are. So I had two batteries in here, and one was there, which is an empty space now, and the lithium ion phosphate one is here. It just has the two connections there for the battery, and again, it's sealed. There's no venting. I did put two straps on, and I put it on a couple of blocks because the enemy of these is too hot and too cold. I'll talk about that. And then I put some blocks down to keep it from shifting back and forth. So it's strapped down, it's blocked fore and aft. It's actually against the side of the cabinetry here, so it's not going anywhere. I did go ahead and add a cutoff switch. I have a Blue C 300 amp continuous cutoff switch, so I could turn it off and isolate it if I want to. Excuse me. Which I never had that before. And I have a battery shunt with a meter. I've already had that. That was a Go Power battery shunt. Okay, so let's go back to the battery. So coming off the battery, I have this 2-watt wire that's for the inverter. I have a 2000 watt Go Power inverter, so that just goes from here to here, and I have a fuse there for the inverter, and that's all that powers. Here I have a terminal fuse coming off the battery. It looks like this. This one's a dual, but basically you just connect this to the top of the battery, and then you put these fuses on top, terminal, and then you put your battery cables on top. So with my new configuration, not having two batteries connected, I saved the need for this too. So this terminal fuse I have at 80 amps, and it's on, I think, a number 4. And it comes over and it powers this fuse block, which goes off to the trailer and powers 3 different fuse blocks. There's one of them. And it also powers the converter, and those have A and L fuses in them, I believe. And so the converter comes in here, the solar comes in here. There's a cutoff switch for the output of the solar, and then here's a fuse for the solar going back to the battery. So the converter and the solar come in on that block. And then I have a cutoff switch for the solar panels coming in. So I can isolate the solar panels coming in. I can turn that off before it gets to the solar charger. And then I can turn the output off, go into the battery. So that's the setup. And yes, it's kind of messy, but again, my trailer is constantly changing with new technology and playing around with it. So that's what you get. All right, let me see if I can measure this battery for you. This is the 280 amp hour eco-worthy. I ended up picking this eco-worthy battery because it does have, it's not, this one isn't specifically UL listed, but they do have one in their lineup that is. This one may still be going through the regulatory process, but it has passed law certifications like CE and I think RHOS and a bunch of other ones. I'll show the picture of the battery so you can see them. Okay. So besides just like playing with technology, another thing that was kind of a problem, you know, again, we always go to full hookup, so it wasn't really a problem. But if we wanted to pull over and use the microwave, I have the 2000 watt inverter connected to the microwave. It's an 800 watt microwave. It would do it. The 2 AGM batteries would run it, but the voltage would drop. So they could be fully charged. They could be, you know, showing 12.5, 12.6 volts. turn on the inverter and then run it to heat something up, and it would go down to like 11 volts, and the inverter would beep, and it would still do it, but it was complaining and beeping, and the voltage was sagging. And of course, the way flooded batteries work is the voltage drops over time, you know, as the battery goes dead, is being used, is drained. Where a lithium battery holds its voltage higher. So it holds it up high, up, you know, about the 12.5, 13 volts, and it goes all the way, and it doesn't drop off until the very end. Then it steeps and goes down. But the nice thing is, during its discharge, it runs all the way down. I tested it when I got the battery in the mail. It had it was only charged up to 30%. And you can tell because it has a Bluetooth app built in. I'll show you that in a minute. But I went ahead, hooked it up, and did the microwave test, and it ran it just fine. Kept the voltage up even though it was at 30%. So the nice thing about the lithium is that lithium ion phosphate is it maintains its voltage all the way across and then drops off. All right, I'm going to do a test. So I have two Lifeline AGM batteries, two 12 volt, 100 amp, 105 amp hour in parallel. And I have a 2000 watt inverter, stuff I've had for years. Inverters down here. It's a Go Power. And that was just basically so I could run my microwave without being plugged in. Okay, so we have 1 amp from solar. Batteries are fully charged. You see that or not? 13.89 volts, 100%, and 1 amp. Okay. So what usually happens when I run the inverter is the AGMs don't maintain the voltage. So the voltage drops, and then the inverter goes into a little bit of an alarm for low voltage, but it still works enough. But just to show you, so I'll turn the inverter on. Okay, so you can see there, it's 13 volts. And then I'll turn this to amps. Okay, 13 volts. Okay, oh, so it's like 6 amps for that inverter just to be on. Okay, so now the microwave is powered on the inverter, so I'm gonna heat up some water. You see the voltage drop, 150 amps, 11 volts, 160 amps. So it don't like it. Okay, so I already cut in for you the test I did with the AGM batteries, and I showed you what the battery voltage was doing and everything. So let's do it again now that I have the lithium ion phosphate. So here's my closet with all my gear stuff in it. So I have my trimetric 2020. You can see the current, the battery's full. You see the voltage, and that's the current. So this is the remote to turn on my inverter. Okay, so the inverter turned on, switch the outlets over. You can see the voltage is high, 14 volts. Solar's on. Oh, I do want to make sure to turn off the converter. We'll talk about that in a minute too. I want to turn off my converter. Okay, so now we're just going off whatever little solar, which isn't much, and the battery itself. Okay, so the converter is off. Okay, so we got 13.8 volts and 2 amps. It's from the lights. I have 110 volt lights and 12 volt lights. Okay, so I have some water in here. we're going to run it. Here's the microwave. It's running off the inverter. You can see here, usually it's about 150 amps. So there's 140 amps. And see how the voltage is staying up? Let's look over here. So 12. And no beeping, no alarms. 144 amps. Here's the inverter. Here's the solar. $138 amps. Well, actually, that's not the solar. That's just the battery monitor. The solar's down there, but nothing was coming in. All right. So there you go. Nice and happy. 13 volts. And let's see. So we use 2.25 amp hours to do that. So I told you a lot of the good things about lithium. Now it's some of the, well, concerns or differences with lithium than with AGM or flooded batteries. One, I talked about the temperature. So lithium ion phosphate batteries, they have a temperature range where you could use them from, I think -4 Fahrenheit to about 140. I'll put it on the screen. I'll look it up. I don't have that big of a memory for that. But they're interesting. Like I said, they have this BMS inside, so they have like a little computer inside, and they have a temperature sensor in them as well. You want to make sure you get one. Some of them don't. Most of them do nowadays, but have a low temperature cutoff, so that when they get to, usually it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but my particular one says it's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. They will turn off for charging, because if you charge them when they're too cold, you can permanently damage it. But again, if you get one that has the low cutoff, the BMS takes care of all that. You don't really have to worry that you're going to hurt it, because it'll save itself. Some chargers have temperature sensors, and they can do that when you program it. But the battery has it built in. The interesting thing is, even though you can't charge it below freezing, you could still discharge it for about another 25-30 degrees, which I thought was weird. I haven't tested all that because I'm in sunny California. But with that extra ability to discharge, a lot of them have built-in heating, or you can put external heating pads on it. But honestly, I think if you're going to have your battery, especially if you're going to have it inside like I do, I'm not going to have to worry about that. I'm not going to be sleeping in here when it's below freezing. Perhaps if you put it outside on the tongue, you may want to consider getting a self-heating one if you're going to be charging it with solar, or just make sure it has a low temperature cutoff. So that's one concern, at least to know about. I don't really think it's that concerning. The second concern or difference is how it charges. So a flooded or AGM battery, they have like a bulk phase. Well, they'll take, a fair amount of current, a good amount. But as they get fuller, and I don't know the percentages, but as they get fuller, they start to not take so much power, and then the charger has to switch to a lower absorption phase and a maintenance phase and all those different phases. To not overdo it on the battery, because they're dumb batteries. They don't have any BMS brains in them, and so they're more complicated to charge in that they have to have these tri-state chargers, and they would take longer to charge than a lithium ion phosphate. Arm's getting tired. So a lithium iron phosphate battery is different in that it will take as much current as basically you can throw at it. So as much charge power as you can throw at it. So if you have a 50 amp charger, it's going to pull 50 amps the whole time. Now they do have limits. If you look at the specs, it could be like a 200 amp charge limit. They have charge limits and discharge limits built into them. And again, they take care of that all by themselves. So like I think I told you when I bought this one, it had a 30% on the battery. And I hooked it up to my Progressive Dynamics charger, which is a 60 amp charger, and it's not lithium specific, but it charged this battery pulling 50 amps the entire time for about, I think about 5 hours until it got to about 100%. So that's pretty cool. That it can charge up very, very fast. And what's nice is for solar. So if you're in the wintertime or you're camping between trees or something and you have a very limited window of sunlight, it's going to take as much as it can the whole entire time. Like as soon as the solar turns on and the voltage comes in, that battery is going to just suck in as much power as it can and get itself charged up while it's available. It's not going to go through these different phases and limit itself until it gets to the top. It's going to go all the way. And then when it gets to the top, the BMS turns it off. Which is interesting because in the software on the app, you can see charging, discharging, standby. So when it's charged up and it's decided that it's fine, it goes into standby. So speaking of chargers or converters, this is one thing that there's a lot of controversy. I don't know if it's controversy, but people recommend, of course, you get a lithium ion phosphate compatible charger. So I already had this IntelliPower for years and years. I've had this, I don't know how long, 15, 20 years. And it's a tri-state charger. It has a charge wizard, and it has that little extra button on there that lets you put it in a different modes, which is kind of handy. But it's not lithium. It's not lithium. It's not. I wouldn't say compatible. It doesn't have the lithium charging profile because lithiums like to have about 14.4 to 14.6 volts is what they say, in order to get the 100%. Some of the videos I was saying, if you put on your old converter, it might only charge your battery up to 80%. Well, this charger didn't do that. This charger charged it all the way up. So I'm not going to change my charger. This one's working just fine. And so if I want to, because this will do 13.6, and if you do the bulk charge, and you can initiate it by pushing the charge wizard button, it'll go to 14.4. So this will charge this lithium ion phosphate battery all the way up, no problem. All right, so I did a test, of course. After the battery was charged up all the way, I turned on the inverter. I put in a 1500 watt space heater, and I ran it off the inverter for a couple hours. I think it brought the battery down, I don't really remember exactly, maybe down to 60%. And then I just let the Progressive Dynamics charger charge up. And then like last night, I saw that it went to, I think it went all the way up. The battery turned itself off and was happy. And then it like dropped to like 99% because I got a few phantom loads. So I just left it that way. So the charger dropped into the maintenance rate of 13.2 or 3, I think. But the battery had 13.6. So I think that's what slowly started the battery to drop. And this is probably one of the reasons you might want a lithium one if you want to get every ounce. But my solar has it's weird. It says it's an AGM / lithium mode. It doesn't say lithium iron phosphate, which newer ones do. But when the sun kicked on, it brought the battery all the way back up to 100%, and then it turned off charging and went into standby. It's funny. It turned off charging, but it still works to run your stuff. It doesn't turn off that off. So that's because of that smart BMS stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you have a charger converter that's probably 4 or 5 years old, you probably have a jumper setting or something where you can change it to lithium, and then you'll get that lithium charging profile. If you have a built-in one that's not super smart and not like a really nice one like this Progressive Dynamics, that's like a $300-something charger, you might want to upgrade your charger. And then if you do, of course, you'd buy one that has a lithium ion phosphate setting. If not, if you have something like this, I think it'll be fine. You could probably just live with it. These batteries are really smart. Like I said, they take care of themselves. I don't think you're going to damage it. I mean, you won't damage it by using a flooded charger. The worst is you just wouldn't charge it all the way up to its max. And then if you have a solar, then you could check the solar setting. So you check the setting on that, see if there's lithium ion phosphate, and you check your solar and see if the converter has a lithium ion phosphate setting on the solar. And then you'll be all set. All right, remember when I said you can, the lithium iron phosphate will take as much power as it can. You'll just suck it dry, whatever you could come up with. Which on one hand is good, on the other hand is not so good. Now I haven't tried hooking up my truck, because my truck has the alternator in it, which is connected to charge the AGMs while you're driving down the road, which most people have. When the truck's running, turned on a relay in the truck, it sends power to your house batteries to charge them. Now, I'm not quite sure what it would do with the lithium iron phosphate, but I know there's concerns about that, especially if you have, really large wires, because basically it's just like hooking up the two batteries together under your hood of your car, and your alternator has to supply power to both of them. But with one of them being, a regular flooded battery, and one of them being this bucket of current, it'll just take whatever it can take. It could cause problems for your alternator. So to get around that alternator issue, I think I'm just going to test it because I have a fuse on it, of course, and I'm just going to see what it'll do. Because with a small wire that's normally on there, I don't know if it's 10 gauge or what, you just can't put that much power through there anyway. In other words, there'll be resistance in the wire, and that'll drop the current. So I'll try it and I'll see it. And if the fuse blows or whatnot, then I'll probably just not worry about it. What some people do, especially like the van life people, is they'll put big heavy wire, like maybe a 6 gauge wire running up to their battery, and so they can charge a high power current to their lithium battery. Some of them will use those big gray connectors. I forget what they're called, Anderson connectors. So they'll put a pigtail, they'll bypass the 7-way plug, they'll put a pigtail on their truck, and then they'll put one on their trailer. And then when they connect the 7-way plug, they'll put the Anderson connector. So you have big wires going from the truck charging system to the lithium. But there's a trick to that. Again, it will take as much power as it can, which isn't good for an alternator. That's not rated for that. So you have to put in something to limit that. And there's 2 ways to do it. One of them is a special relay that connects the lithium battery to your alternator on your truck, again, through the heavy-duty Anderson connector. And it's a timed relay. So it'll turn it on, the ignition's on the truck, it'll turn it on for maybe 15 minutes, and then it'll cut it off. It'll give your alternator time to cool. And then after a while, it'll turn itself back on, send as much current to the lithium as it can, and then it'll turn back off. So that's one way. I guess that's fine. I don't know. I would rather have the second one if I was going to do it. It's called a DC to DC converter. And other companies make them like Renogy and Victron, and they have different ratings. So let's say they have, like, you buy a 30 amp DC to DC converter. So you connect, again, the power wire coming from the truck into the DC to DC converter, and the output of the DC converter goes to the lithium. And that box itself limits the charge power while you're driving to the battery, which protects your alternator from trying to use as much as it can. And on some of those, you can go and you can limit it. You can say, how much current. If you don't want to do 30 amps, you can do 20 or whatever. Or you can just buy a smaller one. They make them 20 amps, 30 amps. On some vehicles, they put a second alternator in them, the really crazy people. And they might put 2 or 3 DC to DC converters in parallel, so they can send, 60, 90 amps to their lithium battery while they're driving. Alrighty, I know it was most of a talking head video. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's turned out so far. I guess I'm going to have to go boondocking now to see how long it'll last. I'm sure it'll last quite a while. Yeah, it turned out nice so far. Really impressed. It seems like this is what a battery should be. You just dump power in, and then it spits it back out when you need it. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, I just keep doing these updates and all that just for fun. My trailer's always been kind of a test bed, but that's part of the fun of having the trailer for me. Okay, that'll wrap this video up. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if have you messed with lithium iron phosphate batteries. What's your opinion on them, and have you had good luck, bad luck? I'd like to know. Until next time, we'll see you down the road.